Most men don't fail because they are weak. They fail because their habits were designed by people who profit from their confusion. And the terrifying part is this. They call it normal. You wake up tired. You reach for distraction before your feet touch the floor. Your mind is already crowded before the day even begins. Notifications, noise, endless opinions from people who have never built anything real. You tell yourself you'll focus tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next month. Then one day you realize your personality was shaped by repetition, not intention. That is the trap Marcus Aurelius warned about long before phones existed. Because Marcus understood something brutal about human nature. A man does not become powerful because he wants to. He becomes powerful because his daily actions stop betraying him. Most people will never hear that sentence deeply enough. They think transformation comes from motivation. They wait for emotional intensity. They search for secret routines, perfect productivity systems, magical morning rituals. But Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while surrounded by war, betrayal, disease, political corruption, exhaustion, and death. He had every reason to become mentally scattered. Instead, he became dangerous through consistency. Not intensity, consistency. And what made his habit system terrifyingly effective was that it was built on one principle modern people secretly hate. He removed negotiation from his mind. That changes everything. Because your life is being controlled by invisible negotiations you don't even notice anymore. I'll do it later. I'm not in the mood. I deserve a break. Just one more hour. Every excuse feels harmless in isolation. But Marcus believed character is not built through massive moments. It is built through repeated permission. Every time you betray your own standard, your mind records it. Quietly, permanently, you start distrusting yourself. And once a man loses trust in himself, discipline becomes almost impossible. This is why so many people consume self-improvement content for years without changing. They are addicted to emotional stimulation, not identity transformation. There's a difference. One makes you feel powerful for 20 minutes. The other changes the structure of your mind. Marcus Aurelius never chased temporary emotional highs because he understood emotions are unstable. If your discipline depends on emotion, then your future depends on weather. Some days you feel unstoppable. Other days you feel empty, weak, distracted, lost. The Stoic system ignored all of that. It asked one question only. What must be done regardless of how you feel? That question terrifies modern minds because it removes escape routes. And deep down, you already know your biggest enemy is not lack of knowledge. It is the habit of self-avoidance. You know what you should be doing. But your mind has learned to escape discomfort before action begins. That is why your potential feels trapped inside you. Not because you are incapable. Because your nervous system became trained to seek relief instead of growth. Marcus built a habit system specifically to destroy that weakness. But to understand it, you need to understand the moment that changed him forever. Most people imagine emperors as confident, fearless, naturally disciplined men. But Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life wrestling against himself. He constantly wrote about exhaustion, distraction, temptation, laziness, frustration with people, emotional control, and the difficulty of maintaining inner order in a chaotic world. That matters, because it means his philosophy was not theory. It was survival. Every morning, Marcus would prepare himself mentally before facing the world. Not with positivity, not with fake optimism. He expected difficulty. He expected manipulation. He expected disrespect. He expected weakness from himself and others. Modern people call that negative. Marcus called it clarity. Because disappointment only destroys the man who expected comfort. Read that again carefully. Disappointment only destroys the man who expected comfort. That single idea changes how you approach every habit in your life. Most people fail routines because they unconsciously expect ease. They expect motivation to remain high. They expect perfect conditions. They expect progress to feel rewarding immediately. So the moment resistance appears, they interpret it as a sign to stop. Marcus interpreted resistance differently. He believed resistance confirmed the importance of the task. That is why his system worked. When you wake up and your body wants comfort, that is the moment discipline begins. When your mind seeks distraction, that is the moment attention becomes sacred. When your emotions beg for delay, that is the moment identity is forged. Not later, now. This is the part most people refuse to accept. Your habits are votes for the type of man you are becoming. Every repeated action strengthens an identity whether you notice it or not. You scroll every night instead of thinking deeply. Your mind becomes shallow. You avoid hard conversations. Your courage weakens. You constantly seek entertainment. Your attention span fractures. You break promises to yourself repeatedly. Your self-respect decays. And eventually something terrifying happens. You stop believing your own words. That is the silent death of discipline. Not failure. Self-disbelief. Marcus understood this centuries ago, which is why his habit system focused less on external achievement and more on internal authority. He knew that once a man regains authority over himself, external victories become inevitable. But most people are living under internal dictatorship from impulses they never trained. Think carefully about your day. How many of your actions are intentional? And how many are automatic reactions? That question exposes almost everyone. Because the average person lives mechanically. Wake up, consume, react, escape discomfort, repeat. Their mind is not leading their life anymore. Their impulses are. Marcus considered this a form of slavery. Not physical slavery, psychological slavery. And the frightening thing is most slaves defend their chains. They defend distraction. They defend weakness. They defend excuses because excuses protect the ego from accountability. If it's not your fault, then you never have to change. Marcus destroyed that illusion immediately. He believed responsibility was freedom. The moment you stop blaming the world, your transformation begins. But that also means there is nowhere left to hide. And this is where his habit system becomes ruthless. Because Marcus did not build habits around outcomes. He built them around identity. Modern people say, "I want to get disciplined." Marcus asked, "What kind of man keeps his word even when nobody is watching?" Modern people say, "I want success." Marcus asked, "What daily actions make success unavoidable?" Modern people chase motivation. Marcus trained obedience to principle. There is a massive difference. One disappears under pressure. The other becomes stronger because of pressure. And this is exactly why weak habits destroy so many lives quietly. Not immediately. Quietly. A man wastes 1 hour every night. Doesn't seem dangerous. Then years disappear. A man delays difficult work repeatedly. Doesn't seem catastrophic. Then mediocrity becomes permanent. A man avoids silence because silence forces self-confrontation. So he fills every moment with noise. Music, videos, endless scrolling, constant stimulation. Then one day he realizes he no longer knows who he actually is without distraction. Marcus would have considered that terrifying. Because a man who cannot sit alone with his own mind is already losing control of his life. That sentence will bother some people. Good. It should. Because discomfort exposes truth faster than comfort ever will. And Marcus believed truth mattered more than emotional convenience. This is why his journal became one of the most powerful psychological documents in human history. Not because it was written perfectly, but because it revealed a man constantly training himself against weakness. That is what most people misunderstand about Stoicism. It is not emotionlessness. It is emotional governance. Marcus still felt frustration, anger, fatigue, fear, doubt, but he refused to let temporary feelings dictate permanent decisions. That alone separates disciplined men from everyone else. Most people obey emotion first and think second. Stoicism reverses that order. And once you understand this, you begin noticing something disturbing about modern culture. Everything is designed to weaken your ability to govern yourself. Fast dopamine, instant gratification, infinite distraction, algorithms competing for your attention every second. Entire industries profit from making sure you remain mentally fragmented. Because fragmented people are easier to control. Marcus Aurelius would have seen modern distraction as warfare against the mind. Not entertainment, warfare. And most people are losing without resistance. They wake up already mentally conquered. No stillness, no control, no discipline, no direction, just endless reaction. That is why this habit system matters now more than ever. Because it rebuilds inner authority. Not fake confidence, not temporary motivation. Authority. There's a difference. Confidence can be performed. Authority cannot. Authority is built when your actions align with your standards repeatedly over time. Quietly, without applause, without validation. without needing people to notice. Marcus trained himself to act correctly even when nobody rewarded him for it. That is rare today. Most people only sustain behavior when recognition exists. Take away applause and the discipline collapses. But Marcus believed virtue had to survive isolation. Could you still maintain your standards if nobody praised you? Could you still train your body if nobody saw the result? Could you still sharpen your mind if nobody applauded your intelligence? Could you still keep your word if there was no social reward attached to it? That is where real discipline begins. In private, not public. And this is exactly why your private habits predict your future more accurately than your public image ever will. A man can fake confidence publicly. He cannot fake repeated private action forever. Eventually reality exposes everyone. Marcus understood that time reveals character. Always. That is why he obsessed over daily behavior instead of grand declarations. Because words are emotional, habits are evidence. You can hear this truth in the way disciplined men move. Calm, precise, unemotional. They do not constantly announce transformation. They build silently until their results become impossible to ignore. Marcus respected silence because silence forces confrontation. Noise allows escape. This is also why many people secretly fear discipline. Not because discipline is painful. Because discipline removes illusions. Once you start acting consistently, you can no longer lie to yourself about your potential. You either execute or you don't. You either lead yourself or you don't. Excuses stop working, and the ego hates that exposure. But Marcus believed a painful truth was more valuable than comforting self-deception. Which leads to the first law inside his habit system. Do not trust your mood. That sounds simple. It is not, because most human beings structure their entire lives around mood management. If they feel good, they act. If they feel resistance, they delay. If they feel uncertain, they escape into distraction. Marcus considered that mental weakness. Not because emotions are bad. Because emotions are unstable, and unstable things cannot lead your life. Imagine building a house on shifting sand. That is what mood-based discipline looks like. Some days productive, some days collapsed, some days focused, some days completely consumed by impulse. Marcus trained stability instead. He trained himself to obey reason above emotion. That is why he could function under pressure that would psychologically destroy most people alive today. And here is the uncomfortable part. You are training yourself every day whether you realize it or not. Every repeated behavior becomes conditioning. Every reaction strengthens pathways in the mind. You are either conditioning discipline or conditioning weakness. There is no neutral state. The man who constantly procrastinates is training procrastination. The man who constantly quits is training surrender. The man who constantly seeks comfort is training fragility. Marcus understood that repeated behavior becomes identity. That is why small habits matter far more than dramatic intentions. And the terrifying truth is this. Your future personality is already being built by what you repeat today. Not what you hope for. Not what you dream about. What you repeat. So if your days are filled with distraction, avoidance, inconsistency, endless consumption, emotional impulsiveness, and broken promises to yourself, then your future identity is already forming. Quietly, every single day, and deep down, you know it. You can feel it. That silent frustration. That feeling that you were meant for more but keep betraying yourself in invisible ways. Marcus wrote for people exactly in that condition. People fighting themselves internally. People tired of their own inconsistency. People exhausted by their inability to control their mind. But his solution was not motivational. It was surgical. He believed self-respect returns through action. Not thought. Not intention. Action. Which means the fastest way to rebuild your mind is not endless analysis. It is repeated proof. Small victories. Repeated daily. That is how authority returns to the nervous system. And once that authority returns, everything changes. Everything changes the moment you stop asking yourself what you feel like doing. And start asking what the person you claim to be would do next. That shift sounds small. It isn't. Because most people live as negotiators with themselves. Marcus Aurelius lived as a commander. Not harsh. Not emotional. Just clear. There is a reason your strongest days feel different. It is not because life suddenly becomes easier. It is because for a few rare hours, your decisions become clean. No bargaining. No internal debate. No endless, Later, action becomes immediate. You remember what that feels like. You also remember how rare it is. Marcus noticed something dangerous inside human nature. Every delay teaches delay. Not every delay in circumstances. Delay in identity. When you repeatedly tell yourself you will begin tomorrow, your mind starts learning a hidden lesson. Your words mean nothing. That lesson spreads. At first it affects routines. Then work. Then health. Then relationships. Then ambition. Eventually it reaches something deeper. Your self-respect. Because confidence is not built by affirmations. Confidence is evidence. Evidence that you do what you said. Most people want confidence first. Marcus demanded evidence first. That is why his habit system begins where modern systems usually end. No complicated trackers. No optimization obsession. No endless planning. Just repeated alignment. He trained himself to close the distance between decision and action. Think carefully. How many goals have died inside planning? How many ambitions became research? How many dreams became preparation? How many years disappeared inside, almost? People talk about fear of failure. Marcus understood something more destructive. Fear of beginning. Beginning means exposure. Beginning means reality. Beginning destroys fantasy. Once you start, excuses lose power. Now results become visible. Now effort becomes measurable. Now your identity gets tested. Many people would rather remain potential forever than discover their limits. Marcus refused that life. He believed action reveals truth. And truth is always more useful than fantasy. So he built a strange practice. Every day, he reminded himself that his body would resist. His emotions would resist. His comfort would resist. And none of that mattered. Imagine waking up tomorrow and expecting resistance instead of being surprised by it. Everything changes. You stop asking, why is this difficult? You start asking, why did I expect it not to be? That question destroys excuses. Most people unconsciously believe meaningful work should feel inspiring. Marcus believed meaningful work often feels ordinary, repetitive, quiet, invisible. The world celebrates dramatic moments. Stoicism respects repeated moments. That difference changes lives. Because transformation rarely announces itself. You do not notice discipline becoming identity. You notice one day that decisions feel easier. Your mind becomes quieter. You stop fighting yourself constantly. You stop needing permission. You stop explaining. And suddenly the habits that once felt impossible become automatic. But there is a cost. Marcus knew this. The cost is comfort. Not physical comfort. Psychological comfort. Because comfort lets you remain undefined. Discipline forces definition. Discipline asks, who are you when nobody is controlling you? Who are you when nobody rewards you? Who are you when nobody reminds you? Those questions expose people quickly. Some realize they only act under pressure. Some realize they only move when watched. Some realize they built an identity around potential instead of execution. Marcus wanted none of that. He believed freedom begins when your standards become internal. That means your actions stop depending on mood, environment, praise, fear, attention, validation. You move because you decided. That is power, not domination of others. Domination of hesitation. And hesitation quietly destroys more lives than failure. Because failure teaches, hesitation preserves illusion. Marcus hated illusion, which leads to the second law of his habit system. Reduce unnecessary decisions. Modern people waste enormous energy deciding. Should I start? Should I wait? Should I feel more motivated? Should I rest? Should I try tomorrow? Every decision drains attention. Marcus simplified. If something was right, do it. If something was wrong, stop. No endless emotional courtrooms. This matters because most people do not lack discipline. They suffer decision fatigue. Too many options. Too much noise. Too much negotiation. Your mind becomes crowded. And crowded minds become weak. Look at your day. How many decisions are actually necessary? How many are just rituals of avoidance? The strongest routines remove debate. Wake, move, work, reflect, repeat. No drama. People underestimate how powerful simplicity becomes when repeated. Marcus knew complexity creates excuses. Simple systems expose responsibility. And responsibility is uncomfortable. Because responsibility removes victims. That's why many people remain trapped. Responsibility sounds empowering until it points directly at your habits. Then suddenly people prefer explanations. But Marcus asked for ownership. Complete ownership. You stayed distracted. Own it. You delayed. Own it. You escaped discomfort. Own it. Not for guilt, for freedom. Because if you caused part of the problem, you can influence the solution. That realization changes the nervous system. You stop waiting. You begin acting. But there is another layer to this system that most people never reach. Marcus was obsessed with attention. Not productivity. Attention. Because attention determines identity. Whatever repeatedly captures your attention begins shaping your mind. This is why distraction is more dangerous than laziness. Lazy people sometimes rest. Distracted people never arrive. Read that again. Distracted people never arrive. Their body is present. Their mind is somewhere else. Always consuming. Always reacting. Always mentally fragmented. Marcus believed scattered attention creates scattered character. Today that insight feels almost uncomfortable. Because entire lifestyles are built around fragmentation. People eat while watching, work while scrolling, think while consuming opinions, rest while stimulating themselves. Nothing receives full attention. Then they wonder why life feels shallow. Depth requires attention. Attention requires discipline. Marcus trained his attention like a weapon. Because where attention goes, identity follows. Imagine applying full attention to your health, your work, your thinking, your conversations, your silence, your standards. Most people never experience this level of presence. Which is why average feels normal. But Marcus was not interested in average. He was interested in alignment. His thoughts, his actions, his values, moving together. And when those align, energy changes. Because contradiction disappears. You stop wasting energy pretending. You stop wasting energy restarting. You stop wasting energy recovering from your own choices. Life becomes quieter, not easier, cleaner. That is what disciplined people rarely explain. Discipline does not remove effort. It removes chaos. And chaos exhausts people more than effort ever does. That is why you can spend all day distracted and feel more tired than after deep focused work. Distraction leaks energy. Focus concentrates it. Marcus understood that centuries ago. Which is why he practiced something uncomfortable. He regularly imagined time running out. Not to create fear, to create precision. Because urgency reveals priorities. If you truly understood time, how much would you stop tolerating? How much delay would disappear? How many pointless arguments? How many empty habits? How many distractions? Marcus saw mortality as clarity, not tragedy. One life, one mind, one chance to govern yourself. That realization makes excuses feel smaller. And this is where most viewers will feel exposed. Because you already know some habits need to die. You already know. You know what drains you. You know what steals your focus. You know which routines leave you disappointed afterward. You know which promises you keep breaking. You know. The problem was never awareness. It was execution. Marcus would not judge that. But he would refuse to comfort it. Because comfort without change becomes permission. And permission repeated becomes identity. This is why habit transformation must become immediate. Not dramatic. Immediate. One action. Today. Not after motivation. Not after preparation. One action. That action matters more than excitement. Because excitement fades, proof remains. And this is where most people underestimate momentum. Momentum is not intensity. Momentum is trust. When you keep showing yourself evidence, the mind starts believing again. You say you'll wake early. You do. Trust increases. You say you'll train. You train. Trust increases. You say you'll focus. You focus. Trust increases. Eventually something strange happens. Discipline stops feeling forced. Because identity catches up. That moment changes people. But almost nobody reaches it because they quit before trust forms. They expect immediate confidence. Marcus expected repetition. That difference creates completely different lives. If this idea is exposing something uncomfortable in you, do something deliberate right now. Like this video. Not because algorithms matter, but because decisions matter. Comment. No negotiation. Share this with someone who keeps saying they'll start tomorrow. Subscribe if you're building a mind that obeys standards instead of moods. Not for numbers, for identity. Because identities are reinforced through visible commitments. And commitment changes behavior. Now understand something important. Marcus never believed discipline meant becoming cold. He believed discipline creates space for meaning. Without discipline, everything becomes reactive. Relationships become unstable. Work becomes inconsistent. Thinking becomes emotional. Time becomes invisible. But disciplined people reclaim time. And once time returns, life changes. That sounds obvious, until you realize how many years disappear through unconscious repetition. Years, not days. Years. People imagine life changes through major decisions. Marcus believed life changes through repeated ordinary moments. You become what you repeat. Quietly, daily, unnoticed, until suddenly everyone calls it talent. And that is one of the greatest illusions. People admire outcomes. They ignore systems. People praise confidence. They ignore repetition. People celebrate achievement. They ignore habit. Marcus ignored applause entirely. He focused on process. Because process survives, recognition doesn't. Now there is one final piece of his system. And most people avoid it. Because it forces confrontation. Marcus believed every day required review. Not judgment. Review. Who were you today? Where did you hesitate? Where did impulse win? Where did standards break? What repeated? Because what repeats becomes destiny. And most people never review. Which means mistakes become routines. Patterns become personality. Years become regret. Marcus refused unconscious living. That is why his journal survived. Not because he wanted fame. Because he refused to drift. And drift is more dangerous than failure. Failure hurts. Drift feels comfortable. Until decades disappear. There is one final realization you need before this system becomes complete. And it changes everything once you understand it. But most people are not ready for it yet. The final realization is this. You do not rise to your goals. You return to your habits. And Marcus Aurelius understood something even more uncomfortable. You do not become someone else. You reveal who you trained yourself to be. That sentence destroys a lot of comforting stories. Because most people secretly believe there is a future version of themselves waiting to appear. A future version that suddenly becomes disciplined. Suddenly focused. Suddenly confident. Suddenly powerful. Marcus would reject that immediately. There is no future version coming to save you. There is only repeated behavior becoming identity. That means the person you become 10 years from now is already being introduced through today. Quietly. Without drama. Without announcement. And this is where the habit system becomes impossible to ignore. Because once you understand this, you stop respecting excuses. Not other people's excuses. Your own. You stop treating your emotions like commands. You stop worshiping motivation. You stop waiting for clarity before action. You begin acting until clarity appears. Marcus believed most suffering came from arguing with reality. You know this feeling. You know what should be done. But your mind starts bargaining. Later. Tomorrow. After I feel better. After I'm more prepared. After circumstances improve. But reality does not reward intention. Reality responds to action. That is why two people can want the same future and arrive somewhere completely different. One negotiates. The other executes. Same ambition. Different habits. Different identity. Different life. Marcus knew something modern people constantly forget. Your life is not built in major moments. Your life is built in ordinary moments repeated long enough. That means your mornings matter. Your evenings matter. Your reactions matter. Your attention matters. Your standards matter. Everything counts. Not because perfection matters. Because repetition matters. And once you see life this way, you stop asking questions that weaken you. You stop asking, how do I stay motivated? You ask, what system removes the need for motivation? You stop asking, how do I feel more confident? You ask, what repeated actions would make confidence inevitable? You stop asking, how do I change my life? You ask, what identity am I rehearsing every day? Those questions change people, because they force responsibility. Responsibility removes fantasy. Fantasy says, one day. Responsibility says, today. And this is where Marcus separated himself from almost everyone. He did not worship outcomes. He respected process. Think about that. The Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men alive, spent enormous energy mastering ordinary actions. Not because ordinary actions are small. Because they are everything. You brush off one promise. Then another. Then another. Soon your own mind stops trusting you. You skip one difficult task. Then another. Soon discomfort controls your life. You escape one uncomfortable emotion. Then another. Soon your entire personality becomes avoidance. Marcus saw this chain clearly. That is why his habit system was designed around interruption. Interrupt weakness before it becomes identity. Interrupt hesitation before it becomes character. Interrupt distraction before it becomes destiny. That is difficult, but not complicated. People confuse difficult with impossible. They are not the same. You already know what to interrupt. That's what makes this uncomfortable. You already know. That habit you keep defending. That delay you justify. That routine that leaves you disappointed. That endless consumption disguised as rest. That inconsistency you explain away. You know. The mind usually knows before the mouth admits. Marcus trusted that. He believed truth arrives quietly. You feel it before you speak it. That is why so many people feel disturbed during moments of silence. Because silence removes escape. Suddenly there are no notifications. No noise. No stimulation. Only truth. And truth usually asks one question. Why are you living below your standard? That question follows people, not because they are failures. Because they recognize contradiction. You say you want discipline. But your habits train comfort. You say you want peace. But your attention trains chaos. You say you want growth. But your actions train repetition. Marcus refused contradiction. He believed internal conflict drains life. The solution was not self-hatred. It was alignment. Think, decide, act, repeat. Simple, but not easy. Because alignment demands sacrifice. You cannot become focused while protecting every distraction. You cannot become disciplined while negotiating every discomfort. You cannot become powerful while remaining addicted to convenience. Something must go. Marcus understood this. Every meaningful gain requires subtraction. Remove unnecessary thoughts. Remove pointless arguments. Remove weak routines. Remove excessive stimulation. Remove dependence on validation. Remove excuses disguised as self-awareness. Create space. Because strength is not always addition. Sometimes strength is elimination. Look at nature. The sharpest blade removes. The sculptor removes. The disciplined mind removes. Marcus did not try to do everything. He tried to remove what weakened him. That is why his habit system feels different. It is not built on becoming more. It is built on becoming less divided. Less distracted. Less impulsive. Less dependent. Less reactive. Until eventually something surprising happens. You feel lighter. Not because life becomes easier. Because your mind stops carrying unnecessary conflict. Decisions become faster. Action becomes cleaner. Your energy stops leaking. You stop needing constant stimulation. You stop announcing goals. You start executing quietly. And people notice. Not because you changed overnight. Because consistency becomes visible. People think discipline looks intense. Usually it looks calm. People think powerful people move dramatically. Usually they move precisely. People think transformation feels exciting. Usually it feels repetitive. Marcus understood all of this. That is why his writings still survive. Because human nature did not change. Different technology, same mind, different world, same struggle, comfort, distraction, delay, impulse, excuses, avoidance. The battle remains internal, always. That is why this habit system still works. Not because it is ancient. Because it is accurate. And accuracy survives time. So now the question becomes uncomfortable. What happens after this video ends? Not emotionally, practically. Because insight without action becomes entertainment. You already have enough information. Most people do. What they lack is execution. So choose carefully, not dramatically, deliberately. Choose one habit. One, not 10. One. Choose the habit that creates the most self-respect if repeated. Then remove negotiation. Do it at the same time. Protect it. Track evidence, not emotion. Build trust, not excitement. Repeat until identity changes. Then repeat again. Months from now you will not remember this video. But you will remember the consequences of what you repeated afterward. Marcus knew that. That is why he wrote to himself. Not for applause. For correction. for clarity, for alignment, and maybe that is the real reason people still return to him. Not because he gives motivation. Because he removes excuses. Because he reminds you of something uncomfortable. You already know more than enough. The question was never knowledge. The question was obedience to what you already know. So when this ends, close the noise, sit in silence, decide, then act before your mind starts negotiating again. Because every delay teaches delay. Every action teaches identity. And every repeated choice becomes a life. Do not promise yourself another beginning. Become the kind of person who no longer needs beginnings. Continue to the next lesson. Do not break the chain. Your future is already watching what you repeat today.